with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
And our special guest tonight on The Record Collectors is somebody that many of you have asked, why have we not interviewed him before? That's because he didn't want to come on the programme. But we have live Tony Sheridan. Welcome to the programme, Tony. Now, I've just been reading a book about the days in Hamburg and those My Bonnet recordings and the start of the Polydor and the Bert Kaempfert. But what's the story before you ever met the Beat Brothers, before then?
Well, it's a long story, all that before that. I mean, that was only really one incident in a whole line of incidents, and preceding that were a whole line of incidents, starting back in art school when I was scrubbing away doing skiffle and decided to go to London, and I sort of went increasingly to London and stayed there in Soho. Eventually didn't do any work at the art school anymore, but skiffle and going to the Two Wise, the same as Johnny and all the rest of us. There was nowhere else to go but the Two Wise.
What art were you studying?
General art. Yes, I was going to be an art teacher because I realised that sooner or later I would have to make some money.
Your first performance as such, where did you play?
Well, they were back in Norwich, my first gigs. You know, the local working men's club. We won £15. We beat all the talent. We did. I'll tell you why, and that sort of got me off the ground. The panel who were judging the skiffle groups in the contest from the whole area, Norfolk, etc., they were all musicians from the band, some sort of professional big band. And they impressed me that they thought we were better than the others, and they were right. They were right. But I mean, I noticed that, you know, you've got to be a musician as well, and not just sort of do the show thing. I wanted to be a musician, and I always was a musician because I used to play classical violin before, orchestras and stuff, you know.
I mean, did you get to know, a fellow artist and a fellow art student, John Lennon? Did you have an affinity with John particularly because of the same interests?
I knew many art students. I didn't know he was an art student until lots later. I thought he was just a rock and roller, a James Dean, Elvis type, like we were all, you know, hard-faced. Don't look at me like that, you know. It was like that. It was, Johnny, wasn't it? Masks, you know, dangerous-looking guys we were. No, I didn't know he was an art student, but many of us were. Many musicians were. Many skiffle guys were sort of to do in the arty world, sandals and beards.
Now, listening to the records I know you through, which is obviously the ones which I have in my collection, which are Beatle-related, you have rock and roll influences from America. Can you remember who your first influence was from the States or anywhere else? First musical influence about saying, I'm going to start performing.
Well, apart from Johnny Ray and Sinatra, of course, living in Norwich, where a lot of American servicemen were stationed during the war. So when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, I was seeing Americans all the time in my hometown and hearing their music. And I don't know, Glenn Miller, of course, but I was hearing sort of whatever was popular at that time. Plus the black guys were listening to blues, and they were there too, you know. So, and I was getting a sort of an impression before I even heard Lonnie Donegan. And when I heard Lonnie Donegan, there was a sort of a tie-up between what I'd heard as a kid and what I was now hearing as a pubitarian. You know, in the puberty it happens, you know, what to do with all that energy. You don't touch girls, you don't look at them even. So, and I got myself a guitar and decided that this is what I want to do, because I thought if Lonnie Donegan can do it, we can all do it. Because he didn't look like it. He was an anti-star, if you know what I mean. He didn't look like Elvis, and he wasn't a big guy. He didn't do much show. He was into music more. No. Oh, he did. I think he did, but in a different way. He was sort of came out of the Chris Barber world, right? Dixieland world. And no, I've decided, I think fairly soon, that I would rather be a seriously taken musician than an Elvis copy or something. Of course, you had to do both. You had to sort of get your foot in the door and wiggle your knees, and we all did that. Right, that was the only way to get in.
Was it sort of a love-hate, well, memory now, looking back at your time when you went to the hall in Hamburg and with Bert Kaempfert cut those records with the Beatles?
Symphony Hall?
It was the major hall in Hamburg, wasn't it? What's it called?
It was called the Friedrich Ebert Halle, and it was just outside Hamburg. Anyway, was there a what?
I mean, your memory concerning your relationship with the Beatles, is it something you look back with sort of positive sides, or is it sort of, well, that overshadows everything else you've done in your life, your art background, your own interest in music, and yourself, or is it sort of like love-hate?
There's no hate in it. I don't think there's much love either, actually. You know, I'm in the same boat, and you're 20 years old, say, 21, and you've got a big ego, a big juicy ego, which we all had. Don't let anybody tell you we didn't have egos. Then, you know, you don't really form close relationships with other singers, not that I know of, you know. All the bands I was ever in, I was in a lot of bands, you know, you finish up fighting, but it's not hate, but, and the love's there sort of later when you've finished with one another, so to speak. So there was never a love-hate thing in any sort of mutual musician relationship, especially not the Beatles, because we appreciated, liked each other.
Do you have, from that recording session, which you must have been asked 1,000 times before, but anything particular that still stays in your mind as a memory about it that you can recall?
Well, we tuned up. We tuned up to a piano, which happened to be on the stage. We recorded this on a stage, you see. There was no studio. The whole studio was behind the curtains. And it just happened to be the same studio that Alexis Korner worked in when he was in the army and working for the NDWR, which was North German radio at that time when he was doing it. So we were using his equipment, so to speak, to be recorded. I thought that was cool. I met him many, many years later, but just before he died, you know, sort of always went past him some way. But there was, no, we tuned up on this piano. We didn't normally tune up, you know. There were no tuners like today. You had to go dong and, you know, but we really, I don't know. No, there was nothing special because we came off the stage in the club, had a couple of hours sleep, and went on the stage and were recorded exactly as if we were playing in the club. No, so there was nothing spectacular about it at all.
Now, I've heard from other sources, but never confirmed, that the original tapes were lost or didn't, and the ones we see are second generation. Is that a fact, or is it just a myth?
Well, what that is...
If you want to talk about it.
Oh, yes. The original tapes, of course, we did the original tapes, and they were used, and they were pressed in glorious mono, etc. But they did disappear from the archives at Polydor in Hamburg, and they turned up in the States. And this is where I think the base of this myth comes from. But there were no mythical tapes. They were the same tapes that turned up there and there and there.
There was nothing on them which is any different from what was eventually released?
No. And if there were any other extra ones, they were destroyed. You know, the Germans were very short-sighted at that time.
They probably didn't realise what they had, but they sure did realise shortly after that, and that record did in fact chart in Germany, but of course it didn't mean anything in the UK at that time. I mean, so it didn't register in the UK at all. What actually happened after it, of course, is legendary. It's a global phenomenon. I mean, how do you live with that?
I mean, Pete Best has a problem, right?
Yes.
It's Pete, and then the question is sort of, well, it's a valid question with him, okay? Because he really was kicked out. But I wasn't kicked out. I was doing very well when they were not doing very well, and I just didn't decide to throw it all out the window and go back to Britain and try again.
But it's nice to know from our perspective how people felt about it.
I have profited very much from the association with the Beatles. You know, look at just the fact that on Anthology 1, my Bonnie is on there, and another couple of things that we did together, and I earned a lot of money without even, you know, moving a finger, you know, so I'm thankful for many things. So.
Do you have like two guys in here, the one which is the Tony Sheridan with the Beatles, and the other one, and also Tony Sheridan as Tony Sheridan as such? I mean, do you wear sort of two hats, really, would you say?
Well, as a Gemini, I've got 200 odd. Goethe says, zwei Seelen in meine Brust, 2 souls in my breast, but I've got hundreds, you know. And, you know, I think that's quite normal for a Gemini to be like that. I'm not divided, schizophrenic about all this. But in one way, it's Jekyll and Hyde. But, I mean, it's great to sort of play on at different weddings simultaneously and get away with it. is. I mean, I can go onto a stage in Germany, somewhere in a folk club. I used to play for the left-wing students, you know, the people who were just about to get arrested, and with my guitar and sing "Blowing in the Wind," where have all the flowers gone? And I used to do that for years. But of course, I was always playing rock, a whole lot of shaking going on, which they despised, you know, the left-wing students. But I was always involved in the student world because I liked it, because I thought that's what I might have missed by not staying at art school or something, you know. Yeah. So I had that one, and I had all the, "Hey, Jody, come on!" I had this one. I had several others, too, and I was singing in German, and I was like a ballad. I was like a Schlagersänger, if you know what that is in Germany, you know, Moon June stuff. Yeah, I was doing that as well. So it's sort of distilled now into going back to the roots a bit. And now I play with a piano player and he's a world champion harp player and a keyboarder. The piano, him and myself, the three of us, electric guitar. And nobody does that.
Now, the Reeperbahn and Hamburg, a lot of people say there's a synergy between that and Liverpool. And having been to both places, I think Hamburg's a bit wilder. But have you any...
No sex in Liverpool, that's for sure.
That's Johnny Gentle saying, "Don't believe it," there, if you're wondering who the voice was, folks. But tell us a little bit about...
This way, there's no religion in Hamburg. That would be the right way to put it. And of course, Liverpool, I mean, lots of Irish Catholic people there. You know, religion is also a way of life there. And the Beatles are on, the rest of the musicians are also half Irish or three-quarters or something. But in Hamburg, there is no religion, even though a Catholic church was positioned right next to the Star Club. And it's still standing. The Star Club is gone, you know, and John Lennon was able to piss on the nuns and things like that from the balcony and hurl nasty words at them, you know. We never said a sentence without using a four-letter word. No, it was that way. You know, getting arrested and everything. So,
have you any other memories, apart from the Beatles or Hamburg, you could share with our listener?
The place I gave the best years of my life. Didn't somebody say that in a song? I never wrote that, unfortunately. No, I just, I played so much. There was no time for anything else, you know. 8 hours a night, every night, pills, little white pills. What? Legal pills.
Those aspirin take some beating. Can I say, Tony Sheridan, thanks very much for being on our program tonight. And here's a few memories from those Polydor days for you.